that every age, as far as literature is concerned, every age uh, reflects the spirit of the age, and when another age comes, that spirit of the age, that rules, that poetic or artistic rules or literary rules is are challenged in the next age, and every age is a reaction to its previous age, and thereby new rules come, new rules of arts, literature actually it emerges, and it gives rise to some new theories of art and literature. And in that way, this romanticism is a reaction, it's a revolution. And as far as romanticism is concerned, let me tell you, there are two important years as far as romanticism is concerned. One is uh, 1789, and another one is 1798. Dear learners, as all of you know, that as far as the history is concerned, 1789 is the age of French Revolution, and this French Revolution had a great impact on the writers, on the poets, and particularly the romantic poets. They were highly influenced by this revolution, and particularly this revolution which gave which gave a sense of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and that changed the whole history of the world. Particularly, democracy is emerging from French Revolution, which gives rise to freedom of expression, individuality, the essence of man's life, liberty, and many other things. Uh, Now, let me tell you how poets, writers of this romantic age, particularly Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Shelley, and how they were actually highly influenced, and how they changed their view of poetry and art, and accordingly how they are reacting, they are revolting against the neoclassical spirit, the neoclassical rules, the neoclassical diction, the the rigid the rules that was governing poetry and art in neoclassical age, and how this was challenged by the new poets, the romantic poets of this age. Uh, as far as romantic criticism is concerned, there are some characteristics. If you have copy, you may note down. So it is a move from a theocratic universe to man-centric and nature-centric universe. The classical age actually, it is an age of theocratic mentality. Theocratic mentality means actually people almost most of the people, majority members in the society, they were believing that God represents truth, and that is an ideal world, as Plato says, and where actually all truths are derived, and whatever man's essence of life actually it is derived from God. It is a blessing from God. A man doesn't have any capability, any capacity to change its face, his fate. Man's fate is determined by the mercy of God. So this is there was a theocratic sense of the world, uh, and actually this is very very well expressed when Pope says in one of his uh, creations. He says on actual particular on there is he has written essay on man where he is saying, "Know then thyself, presume not God to scan. The proper study of mankind is man." Actually, when he is saying the proper study of mankind is man, actually he is giving emphasis on um, man's reason and logic. That by application of reason and logic, uh, man can discover many. Man can discover his life. Man can do many things. Man can change. Man can actually uh, perceive the world as it is, and man can be nearer to God through his belief and through applying his also reason and logic. So, as poets like Pope, Dryden, actually they were actually guided by rules, neoclassical rules, particularly this heroic couplet and meter, iambic pentameter, and other poetic rules, which was governing their poetic diction, which is now actually is challenged in the Romantic Age by the Wordsworth and by Wordsworth, Coleridge, and many other poets. Here, actually, this actually freedom from rules comes. They wanted to get freedom, so that as Wordsworth says, actually, freedom gives a sense to the poet, where actually he finds himself and he discovers himself, and also he becomes able to um, write whatever he likes. And also, in the preface to lyrical ballads, he says that poetry actually it is not about rules. It is about the poet's vision, his personality, his expression of personality, and whatever freedom he enjoys in this world. Actually, he expresses. It is the expression of his emotion and personality. So that is why in this actually romantic spirit, in the romantic diction, actually in the romantic theory of poetry, Wordsworth says about subjective and impressionistic poetry, subjective poetry and impressionistic poetry. Uh, as Blake says actually in one of his lines, beautiful lines about human imagination. Um, he says human imagination is the divine vision and flutation. Also, he says in one of his lines, immortal lines, he says, if you want to see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower, hold infinite in your hand and eternity in an hour. That means uh, how natural objects, the how nature represents the God, God itself, and how in nature one can find everything. One can discover uh, whatever this world can offer to man. So, uh, uh, so there is a move in romanticism and in the romantic theory. Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, actually, sorry for interruption. Um, because of some technical reasons, there was a disruption. Let us continue again. So, freedom of rules, subjective and the impressionistic modes of poetry, importance on imagination. Actually, there is a departure from regions to imagination. Here, human imagination has been given prime importance. As Blake says, one of his lines, there is a shift from God to nature, and again from nature to man. Uh, there is a line also. Byron writes in one of his poems. He writes, there is a rapture in the seashore. There is a pleasure in the pathless woods. There is a rapture in the seashore. I do not I do not hate. I do not like man the less. I do not like man the less, but nature more. So this is a beautiful line, as it reflects how nature has been worshipped by the romantic poets, by the romantic writers, by the romantic artists. He says that there is a pleasure in the pathless woods. There is a rapture in the seashore. I like man not less. I like man not less, but nature more. It is a line from a child herald's pilgrimage. This is a line. This is a beautiful line from Child Herald's Pilgrimage by Byron. So here you see how nature has been, and also this actually the sense of worshipping nature, sense of finding nature as a source of life, as a source of inspiration. Actually, the romantic poets they are deriving um, this sense from Rousseau, who says, "Let us go back to nature." And also Rousseau says, "Nature has made man free, but in society, man is everywhere in chains." So these are some of the ideas that romantic poets they have derived it from French Revolution, and accordingly they are expressing it in their poetry, and also whatever theory they are giving in their criticism, they are also practicing it. We will discuss it as we go to Wordsworth's Preface to Lyrical Ballads, which published in the year 1798. Actually, though in 1798 it was published, uh, but several times it was revised. It's a revised publication again um, after 2 years. In 1800, the second edition was published, where Wordsworth and Coleridge they also added some poems, and also the preface was also revised. Some more elements were added, and also as we find in 1815 also, in 1802 and 1815 again it was revised. The purpose of revision was to add some more poems, and whatever poems were there in this preface to lyrical ballads. Originally, it consisted 17 poems by Wordsworth and 4 poems by S.T. Coleridge. So it was a joint venture. You cannot say it was only uh, the creation of the credits should not go to only Wordsworth. Coleridge and Wordsworth both actually they discussed a lot about poetic diction, poetic theory, and Wordsworth wrote it and published it in 1798. So actually, since lyrical ballads, actually these were new poems. These were as far as a theme is concerned, as far as poetic diction is concerned, as far as uh, theme and form both are concerned. Actually, it was a kind of new poetry to England. The readers would be confused, and perhaps they thought that perhaps they would not accept it. Um, they would not actually appreciate it. That is why there was a necessity of writing this preface. And when this preface was published, actually it was well received by the readers. And here, actually, in this preface, actually, Wordsworth is trying to explain the readers, the English people, what type of new poem they are. And again, while explaining what type of new poems, he is also prescribing some rules. He is also trying to explain the poetic process, the role of a poet, the function of criticism, and many other things in this poem. I will discuss one by one. He is also defining poetry, and I hope all of you know it. So he gives a beautiful definition of poetry. While defining poetry, Wordsworth says, "Poetry is the overflow of powerful emotions recollected in tranquility." So this is the definition of poetry that Wordsworth gives in his preface to lyrical ballads, where he discusses a lot of things. Poetic process, how poetic process goes on when somebody comes across um, this world or any beautiful piece, any maybe a flower, maybe a beautiful woman, or anything, or this uh, any natural object, beautiful scenery like your lakes, your mountains, the blue sky, whatever. So when a poet comes across any beautiful object, actually immediately there is a overflow of powerful emotion. But actually he tries to record his impression on any beautiful object, and then when he finds a leisure, he recollects those emotions and composes a fine poem out of these impressions. So poetry actually is altogether an overflow of powerful emotions, and it is recollected. Tranquility means when leisure time is uh, there, the poet makes it final. So this is the poetic process. So when if we analyze this poetic process, we can find one thing is very clear. What is it? That beauty doesn't. Again, also this is a line from Wordsworth. Beauty doesn't lie in the objects. Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Please note it down. This is another beautiful uh, statement given by Wordsworth, that beauty doesn't lie in the objects, it lies in the eyes of the beholder. So this is a sense of romantic beauty. Even black can be beautiful. That is why in Odisha we worship Lord Jagannath. Jagannath is black, but he is worshipped. He is also beautiful. So the sense of beauty, that beauty is a sense. It is something, a um, personal vision or personal view, an artistic view which lies in the eyes of the beholder, means the person who is coming across any beautiful object. So beauty is something personal. Beauty is not impersonal. Beauty is not universal as classical poets, classical artists they believed. That there was a rule, and according to that rule, whatever is beauty, whatever is truth, whatever is God, whatever what is what, actually it was perceived by following the rules. One cannot have any individual opinion on any matter. So that is why there is a break to this uh, point of view, and accordingly romantic poets, they are defining art, beauty, and also they are also discussing poetic process, how poetic process is carried out. And also here actually another important thing is poet's personality is given importance. As Wordsworth says, a poet is a man speaking to another man, right? Again also we find also actually this is an echo of again that French Revolution, where liberty, equality, fraternity was the hallmark of that revolution. So here actually poet is a man. He has some individual perception, he has some individual view, he has a personality, and he expresses this personality in his poetry. So whatever he feels, whatever pain, suffering, whatever pleasure, whatever beauty he has in his mind, he expresses in his poetry, and accordingly he has an agenda. He has an agenda also as far as society is concerned, as far as social rules are concerned, as far as social realism is concerned. He has a point of view, and he expresses it, he reflects it in his poetry. That is why poetry is an individual's personality. It is an expression of an individual's personality, and also it is his agenda. If the poet belongs to a political party, he is also placing his agenda. If a poet belongs to a particular theory, a particular school of thought, he is also providing his own agenda. So again, actually, I will discuss it when I discuss that a new criticism in my next class. I will discuss how Wordsworth has also been criticized very seriously by T.S. Eliot in his essay. Tradition and individual talent. We will discuss it. Then, what is a poet? As I have discussed, Wordsworth says, a poet is a man speaking to another man. Uh, he is a different person. He has some. He has a greater faculty of imagination. He has a greater faculty of imagination. He has an exceptional uh, imagination. As a result, actually, he is unable to perceive beauty, truth, and God, whatever nature, whatever it may be, and accordingly, he is able to receive the artistic view of any object. And also, Wordsworth here actually gives another view, again for which again he is also criticized, and this view is poet as a teacher. He says in his preface to Lyrical Ballads, if I am not a teacher, I am nothing. I am nothing if I am not a teacher. That means poet as a teacher teaches the society, the people, and accordingly also he is placing his view, he is placing his vision, he is placing his philosophy of life. A poet has a philosophy of life, he has a worldview, and accordingly he is uh, he is uh, he is presenting it, he is expressing it, he is reflecting it in his poems. And again, he also discusses something about the function of poetry, and this is another important, very also accepted view, a very important statement he gives as far as his preface to Lyrical Ballads is concerned. He says poetry is, while defining poetry, while discussing the function of poetry, he says poetry is the breath and finer spirit of all knowledge. Please note it down. This is very, very important as far as Wordsworth's preface to Lyrical Ballad is concerned. He says poetry is the breadth and finer spirit of all knowledge. Again, he adds, saying that it is the impassioned expression which is the countenance of all science. That means he leaves no distinction, he leaves no differences between art and science, between poetry and science. That means he says that poetry includes all, and particularly at this point, he is absolutely right, and he is accepted by all, and he is here actually placing a universal view, and he is also approaching the classical sense of art and literature. He is becoming a classic when he says that poetry is the breadth and finer spirit of all knowledge. Actually, you see, if you silently analyze this sentence, you can find that, see, as far as romanticism is concerned, there is a departure from rules, and accordingly, poetry is becoming prose. And in the 20th century, poets like T.S. Eliot, James Joyce, they are actually practicing it. There is absolutely no difference between prose and poetry, because that's simply because they nowadays, actually, even in the postmodern time, in today's time, actually, the language of poetry and prose, there is no difference. But again, theme and language, there is no difference, because poetry can be written on any subject, not only expressing nature, not only glorifying God, not only on philosophical matters, even on scientific matters, poetry can be written. So poetry can include any knowledge, any branch of knowledge. It can be philosophical, it can be artistic, it can be anything else, and there is absolutely no difference. That is why there is the new form which has been adopted by the modern poets as well as the postmodern poets. That is prose poetry. James Joyce is the father of this approach. Prose poetry means there is no difference between prose and poetry. Right. Uh, and there is another function of poetry, as he says, breadth and finer spirit of knowledge. And again, on poetry and religion, Wordsworth says, like religion, poetry also consoles and sustains us. Poetry consoles us as well as it also sustains us. As Matthew Arnold also, we'll discuss Matthew Arnold. If it is possible, in my next class, I will discuss Matthew Arnold and some of the modern poets when I will discuss that the new criticism. Matthew Arnold also accepts this view, and in his study of poetry, there is a critical essay written by Matthew Arnold, Study of Poetry, Culture and Anarchy. So where actually he says that there is no difference between poetry and religion. Our poetry, he says, our poetry is uh, our religion. Our religion is written in poetry. It is an unconscious poetry. Our religion is an unconscious poetry, who says, Matthew Arnold says in his essay, the study of poetry. And if you analyze Hindu texts, some of the Hindu, particularly the Vedas, the Upanishads, Ramayana, Mahabharata, it is written in poetry. Almost the whole Hindu text. Anybody who has unmuted the mic, please you mute your mic so that I can be audible and I can clearly um, speak something. Anybody who has unmuted your mic, please mute it. Let me tell you who has unmuted mic. Anybody, are you getting me? Please unmute your mic. It is creating a noise.
Noise created
Well,
out.
hello. Please mute your mic. Yes, actually, he is saying about religion and poetry. Religion and poetry, there is no difference. It is an unconscious poetry as far as religion is concerned, because most of the religions in the world, they have written in a poetic language.
Oh,
Please,
କେନ୍ତା
please, dear learners,
ପଢୁଛନ୍ତି?
mute your mic so that I can speak something.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, hello. Who has muted your mic? Okay, I think it has been muted. Well, now uh, move to another point regarding imagination and fancy. Uh, Very extensively, S.T. Coleridge has discussed it in his um, biography and literature. I will discuss it today. Wordsworth also says something about imagination and fancy, and he says about imagination, it is a transforming power. It is a transforming power, so that an ordinary person can be a poet, so that a poet can be a visionary. A poet can go to a divine state by means of, by the wings of, as Keats says, by the wings of imagination, fly. I will fly to thee. When he writes a poem, Ode to Nightingale, he says, by the wings of imagination, I will fly to your world, your divine world, or your world of immortality. I think all of you have read it, Ode to Nightingale. Uh, Regarding poetic imagination, sorry, yes, regarding poetic imagination, this is his view. He also says something about fancy, which has again been discussed by St. Coleridge. Fancy is something which is secondary, it is not primary matter. It is not primary matter for the poet. It is not a primary thing for the poet. Regarding poetic diction, this is an important point as far as preface to lyrical ballad is concerned. Poetic diction, let me tell you, here actually again we find the echo of French Revolution, the philosophy of French Revolution. Here actually Wordsworth says that common man's language, this is very very important, please note it down. Common man's language or rustic language is the right language, is the appropriate language for poetry. So Wordsworth makes uh, language of poetry as common man's language, as rustic language, means common folk language, or people living in rural areas. Those who may be illiterate, who may be uneducated, but they understand poetry, and accordingly, Wordsworth says, "Let us write poetry for them, for the common people, for the Aam Aadmi." Right. So this is another important point as far as Wordsworth's theory of poetry, is diction of poetry, language of poetry is concerned. And here actually today also many artists hold this view, and accordingly poetry is becoming, or poetry is written on common man's language, or by using common man's language, ordinary language. Nowadays also poetry is written, but uh, Coleridge again, his own friend, Coleridge again, uh, he raises some objection, and also he criticizes Wordsworth for this. I will discuss it later on. Uh, Now you come to again another important um, towering literary figure, and also a critics, a romantic critic. He is S.T. Coleridge, Thomas Stone Coleridge, uh, who writes Biographia Literaria in 1817. This is the year when Biographia Literaria was written, and here he has his own manifesto. Like Wordsworth, when he writes Preface to Lyrical Ballads, he had his manifesto, he has his agenda, he has his theory of poetry, and here also, like Wordsworth, S.T. Coleridge, actually, he is bringing Biographia Literaria, writing Biographia Literaria, where he is also discussing poetic process. He is also uh, discussing some of the rules. He is also defining poetry, and also he is evaluating his own friend Wordsworth's theory of poetry, and also saying many things about poets and poetry. Also, he has another critical essay, lectures on Shakespeare and other poets. In 1811, he is publishing it, but he published it, and let us only will today in this class I will discuss something about Biographia Literaria. Uh, Here actually, here S.T. Coleridge actually while giving importance to romantic criticism, romantic theory of poetry, he is uh, he is trying to reiterate, he is trying to reevaluate Wordsworth's views on imagination, on fancy, and he is also uh, again actually somebody has muted your mic. Please let me finish. I will allow some minutes. If you can ask any questions, you can ask me. But please let me finish and please mute your mic. Hello, please mute your mic. I request please mute your mic. Uh, Here actually, ST called this while discussing something on a poet's imagination. He is uh, dividing imagination into two parts. One is imagination, one is primary imagination, another one is secondary imagination. Also, he is differentiating between imagination and fancy. What is says, let us first discuss what is primary imagination as far as literary biography is concerned. Primary imagination, which is there in everybody. Everybody in this world, as a human being, we have some impressions about this world, about the creation, and whatever objects we see, we immediately derive some impression. We develop some impression. So that is primary impression, right? So it is a faculty common to all. But what is secondary imagination? Secondary imagination is something deeper. It is something intense. It is something filled with some philosophical point of view as well as some artistic point of view. That means it is something artistic. It is something more philosophical. It is something deeper, right? So secondary imagination only it is there in poets, in artists, in writers, in creative people. Otherwise, creation could not be possible. So whenever a creation takes place in the mind of a poet or any writer or any artist, actually he has a secondary imagination, and accordingly he perceives things in a different way, in a different approach. That is why poetry becomes possible in secondary imagination. Poetry, while defining poetry, S.T. Coleridge says poetry is a harmonious whole. He, he, he gives this phrase in his literary biography. He says it is a harmonious whole. And when he says harmonious whole means actually form and content, which we have already discussed in my first class. I discussed it while discussing 10 tenets of liberal humanism, deriving it from Peter Berry's book, Literary Theory or Beginning Theory. I discussed it. Any piece of art or literature which has a permanent value, which has a permanent importance, actually uh, it must be a fusion. It must be a fusion between form and content. That means uh, the 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 artist head and heart must combine together, right? one's head and heart. Head means your reason, your logic, and your heart means your feeling capacity. Your reasoning capacity and your feeling capacity must be fused, like as I also gave an analogy how in a compound it is difficult, it is not easy to separate the elements. The same way, form and content cannot be separate, so it is a harmonic whole. Poetry is indeed a union of deep feelings with profound thoughts and sublimity. Poetry is indeed a union of deep feelings with profound thoughts and sublimity. Longinus, classical critics who writes on sublimity, right? He has written a critical essay, and sublimity is also this deep feelings where actually you create artistic, uh, you have an artistic bent of mind, and you fused your emotion. That means again, when we will discuss T.S. Eliot, I will discuss it again in a different way as per his theory. That means your emotion, your personal emotion will touch in a universal emotion, or will go to the height of a universal emotion, and thereby poetry becomes an organic whole or a harmonious whole. Then again, while saying this, he also adds another important literary term, that is one of the very important literary terms as far as English literature is concerned. This is willing suspension of disbelief. So when poetry becomes a organic whole, it becomes a union of heart and head. It creates a dramatic effect, and that dramatic effect can be enjoyed by the readers. If and it how they can enjoy it by allowing their willing suspension of disbelief. So what is willing suspension of disbelief? Willing suspension of disbelief means when you read a poem, when you read a piece of art, and particularly when you witness a drama, a play, actually willingly you suspend your disbelief. That means you suspend your logic, you suspend your reasoning, you suspend your rationality. That means sometimes you become unconscious. You forget that this is acting. You forget that this is a poem. This is only a line I am reading. Better I should not cry. I should not weep. So there are readers, sensible readers. While reading a poem, they shed tears, right? While also witness watching, or while witnessing a scene in a drama, when the tragic hero faces harsh consequence of life, one weeps, one cannot control one's emotion, and immediately a stream of tears flow from one's eyes. And this is because of the fact that there is a sense of willing suspension of disbelief. So this is one of the great terms as far as literature is concerned. St. Coleridge coins it while discussing this literary biography, that poetry has the power. You can see life as it is, if the poetry is an organic whole, if the poetry is a higher quality, if there has been a fusion of head, heart, and soul, so definitely it is creating willing suspension of disbelief, and there you can enjoy a piece of poem or a piece of art. Uh, Coleridge, uh, as I was telling, I will discuss this point. Coleridge actually he differs from Wordsworth as far as this poetic diction is concerned. As far as language of poetry is concerned, Coleridge has a clear distinction. Coleridge has a different point of view with Wordsworth. He is not agreeing to his theory or to his point when Wordsworth says the language of poetry should be the language of common man. Actually, he says when Wordsworth says that poetry is an overflow, powerful emotion, recollected in tranquility. When he says the second clause, recollected in tranquility, means actually the poet is here conscious, not unconscious. When actually overflow of emotion is there, he is unconscious. The poet is unconscious and records the fast uh, flow of emotion when somebody or when an artist comes before and a beautiful object. But when he is finding a leisure, when he has a leisure, when he is recomposing it, it is a conscious effort, and here the language is bound to be changed. You cannot use the same language which you have used when you come across a beautiful object, or when you try to write a poem on any matter, you just make a rough. You make a rough, just immediately you write whatever comes to your mind, write the point. That is why the great writers, great poets, they hold uh, a piece of notes and a pen, and whatever idea comes, immediately they record. And poetry is not created there. Poetry is created when the artist or when the poet is in a tranquil mood, and when actually he is at a leisure, and there actually he is not using the same language. Here actually it is a conscious effort. The language is altogether changed. He revises it. He tries to delete some of the lines. He tries to improve, and to some extent also he follows a pattern, an artistic pattern. And there actually he is not using the same language. He is rejecting some of the impressions, some of the lines, as well as some of the thoughts also. The thoughts is also revised. So thereby uh, he is having a different opinion, and he rejects this view of Warsaw that it is always written in common man's language. Even though it is written in common man's language, but it is common man is not using symbols. Remember another important thing: common man is not using images, symbols, myths, which are now literary devices used to write or to compose a poem. So he is using just he is using language directly, and whatever comes to his mind, he uses it. A common man uses it, and that cannot be fit to be the language of poetry. What Cornell says. So with this, let us move to Shelley. What Shelley says, as far as P.B. Shelley is concerned, P.B. Shelley gives emphasis on the same matter, that is imagination and reason both. And here actually, in romantic revival, in the romantic period, Shelley is the one poet who has been influenced by French Revolution to a greater extent. And Shelley is again one poet who has never repented, who has uh, uh, who has never thought that even French Revolution has any negative impact, which Warsaw thought, other poets thought, and Keats was the least uh, uh, impressed by French Revolution. He was not at all impressed by any French Revolution. He was a different kind of poet. I will discuss it if I get time. But Shelley actually, as a revolutionary poet, he is the only revolutionary poet like our Ravi Singh or Sachin Rai in Odia. So he has used French Revolution as he has used he has used poetry as a vehicle of revolutionary spirit. He expressed his revolutionary spirit, and while writing an essay, Defense of Poetry, in 1821, he is providing a definition of poetry, saying that um, it is um, it is the source of divine, okay, center and conference of knowledge, and at the same time, he is also saying that it is the vehicle of a revolutionary spirit. It is a an outlet of revolution. That is why his word to West Wind we find his revolutionary spirit. And also he actually here in this essay he says something about the poets, and he says that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Since he was very much revolutionary in his approach, he says that poets they actually, though they are not acknowledged by the society, They are not the rulers. They are not the kings. They are uh, not the accepted leaders of the world. Still, they are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. That means poets, they are meant for to reform the society, to bring a change in society. So here actually definition becomes this definition becomes an agenda of Shelley, and that is why his views are not so much regarded in modern times. Though he has written beautiful poems, his poems are accepted, but his literary views are not so much accepted in the modern time. Again, let us go uh, to Keats, John Keats. John Keats, he has written beautiful words. You know the six immortal words he has written, and he has devised, though he has not written any critical essay like Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Shelley. He has also written some letters. He has written some letters to his friends, and there actually he has given beautiful um, literary terms like negative capability and egoistic sublime. These uh, two words, two phrases are very very important. I think some of you know it. Negative capability while referring to Shakespeare. He says that this is the height of an artist to have negative capability to create negative characters as Shakespeare has created like Iago, right? So to create negative characters in one's drama or play, or to deal with an evil world, the world filled with evils, betrayals, negative things. So actually, one must have a capability to resist all these negative things in the world, and accordingly, if he can resist, he can create great work of art. So this is known as negative capital. That means you must be able to repress it. You must be able to resist it. You must be able uh, to fuse it in your art so that you can create a beautiful piece of art while describing a character, while describing something. Um, for example, if somebody is writing a dramatic monologue, particular dramatic monologue means actually it's a form of poetry where you can place, you can express the views of a villain. You can, for example, let us take the name of Punjilal. Punjilal is was a lecturer in English, and he did something, you know, for which he was abused and he is now in jail. So the point is, if you write a dramatic monologue on Punjilal, that means he had a lot of negative quality. So you are, when you are expressing it, his negative quality means you are exposing his character. Thereby, you are creating a piece of art, and you are letting the world know that how a negative character has, how a negative personality has a very evil mind, and how he destroys humanity, how he kills humanity because of his ego. So the point is actually it is a means of an artist to get rid of the evils, and thereby while involving with the evil elements of the world, he can create art. So this is something known as negative capability, and all artists, good artists, quality artists, they should have negative capability so that they can create good piece of art. And another important phrase he gives, egoistic sublime, while again criticizing Wordsworth. Actually, here also um, in this romantic period, some poets like your Coleridge and Shelley, they have criticized Wordsworth particularly. Wordsworth, as I have told, Wordsworth appears to be a teacher. That means he has a moral vision, and accordingly, he wants that the whole world should be filled in with virtuous qualities. All people should be good, as we sometimes Hindu says, "Sarvabhav Sukhino Sarvasa." Is it possible? It is not possible to have a beautiful world. If you think that always that let there be a beautiful world, let everybody should be good, should be educated, should be refined, should be virtuous, should be a saint-like person. This cannot be possible. This may be possible. This is a romantic view of life, that everything should be good. but actually in reality this has never happened. This is not there today, nor it will be there in the future. This is absolutely a vision which suffers when you come to reality. So Wordsworth was suffering from a perfectionist syndrome. You can say you can take the help of psychology. In psychology, there is a term perfectionist syndrome. Perfectionist syndrome means you are suffering from a syndrome, means a kind of disease in your mind, a psychological disorder. That why people are not good in this world. Why my family members, why in society such things happen. You go and asking questions, but you cannot get answer. So this is egoistic sublime, which Wordsworth was suffering from, and that is why he was pushing himself as a teacher, as a moral master, as a uh, as a ruler. That he was prescribing rules that let everybody become a poet, let everybody worship nature, etc., etc. He was only giving some kind of rules, which again he was also appearing as a neoclassical poet, for which actually Wordsworth's theory was rejected in his own time. Again, in the modern time, his theory absolutely was criticized by Eliot and many other poets. We will discuss it in our next class. I think the time perhaps is now. Yes, and I would like to take some questions. If anybody would like me to give some questions or to raise some questions, you please ask me. Otherwise, we'll conclude. Any question to me on this romantic criticism and the theory of Wordsworth, Coleridge? You see, I have only discussed some of the basic points, some of the basic issues as far as the romantic criticism is concerned. A lot of things you can read from your material. Uh, Beautiful IGNO material is there with you. You don't worry. It is sufficient. If you read it, you find time. Please go through it. Try to make notes. Hold a piece of pencil or pen. Try to read it line by line and try to make a note out of it, so that depending on your knowledge, depending on your perception, depending on your maturity, you can have your notes, and you can it will be sufficient to face the examination. And I hope if you read this material sincerely, you will have a better result, right? Besides, you can have some more books. You can take the help of internet. There are plenty of materials available. Even some lectures are also available. Many lectures are available on YouTube. You can hear it, right? You can listen to it. You can also read a lot of material. But that that should be secondary. Primary is you should read your own material, IGNO material. If a hard copy is there, you can use it. Otherwise, soft copy is available on eGancos. You can get it downloaded, and or you can read on your computer screen or mobile screen. No problem. So with this note, once again I invite any one or two questions. If somebody can ask, please ask me.
Uh, Good morning, sir. My name is Pratik Kumar Mund. Yesterday I have joined, and actually my question is all about what, according to Shelley, is the contribution of poetry to the fabric of society. That is in last chapter.
Yes. As I told you, that Shelley is the only poet who was a revolutionary. In his own life, he was a revolutionary. No, he was expelled from his university where he was studying. Okay, and he wrote a lot on atheism. So he was a revolutionary. Atheism, going against God, against rules. So he, like Rabi Singh and some other poets. So he was extremist. He was a kind of extremist, and accordingly, like Wordsworth, also he gave some definitions. So he also prescribed some rules, highlighting poets, their position in society, highlighting poet, and they have a very strong view of freedom and emancipation. That poetry as a vehicle of emancipation, freedom. That means if readers are reading poetry, romantic poetry, they are emancipating themselves. They are trying to get rid of the classical rules or the classical worldview, where actually ordinary people were enslaved by under the classical rules or rulers. So actually, they try to remove this pain. and suffering from the people. And again, I forgot to discuss this point, important point. I think I left it because of the paucity of time. There was industrial revolution, and industrial revolution brought a lot of pain and suffering to the masses. Masses means to the common people. Common people actually they were neglected in their time. As a result, actually, romantic poets, some of the romantic poets, not all, they tried to make them free. They try to through their poetry, they try to give a message. What is the message? The message of social revolution, the message of change, the message of challenging the old order of society. So in that way, actually, whatever the definition is giving, whatever rules he is saying, whatever in whatever way he is highlighting the poet, the role of a poet, that it is almost it is as if bringing a revolution in society and making people to free from the old world or old society, orthodox society of the classical or neoclassical times. Am I clear? Hello, Pratik Babu.
हाँ sir, clear sir.
Okay, thank you for your interest. I was satisfied to see that learners like you, and I hope almost all of you are very excited to learn something about literary criticism theory and a lot of beautiful texts that have been prescribed for you. So thank you for your interest.
Again, thank
Any
you.
question to
धन्यवाद
me?
sir. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Any question to me, or it is already 10? I hope. Any question to me? Hello, dear learners. Hello. Okay. Let us conclude. I thank you all for your beautiful cooperation and your
Thank you, sir.
deep interest in your MEG-5. Thank you. If some of you have MEG-7, I think Aditya sir he has he says he doesn't have time to take MEG-7. So I think to adjust that class. So I will try to take your MEG-7 in the afternoon. So thank you. Wishing all the best. Let us conclude.
Thank you, sir.